Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday Night NETIV. And tonight we're going to be talking about Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Elon Musk. Now, we know Elon Musk has got a big job going on here in the United States and will be active for the next year and a half. But he also has other tools in the fire, I guess would be a way of putting it, that we already know about. And tonight, hopefully, I can give you some more information about some of the things he's doing in Saudi Arabia, which is ticking off the Iranians because they can't keep up with him. So anyway, let's go back. I want to just talk for a second. No, excuse me, it's going to be longer than a second. I want to talk about the things that are happening just this week that have not only political importance, but biblical importance. And some of them I talked about last week when I talked about Korea, but I want to go back and rehearse and look at those again. So, first off, the most obvious thing that happened this week was Donald Trump becoming president number 47. That was the most obvious, which is actually snowballing lots of other things happening. And it's going to be a rather interesting 4 years if it goes that 4 year term. Trump is already working on his cabinet, and many of the picks are not exactly what you call non-controversial. And there's going to be lots of things that are going to be happening because of that. But Elon Musk also, to say his name again, Elon Musk is so valuable to what's going on in cutting budgets and those kinds of things. But I don't know if you understood that when President Trump was talking with the Iranian prime minister, that Donald Trump had in the same room, and part of the conversation was with Elon Musk. So there's a cooperation that's going on there that's unseen. But Elon Musk is reaching outside of the United States, and he's bringing his agenda to the world, which matches up and lines up with the agenda of Donald Trump. So it'll be interesting to see where it all ends up in the next 4 years. But for the next year and a half, he's going to be in charge of cost cutting for the United States, which will be rather interesting because not that it hasn't been tried before, but this is the first time he and Vivek Yaswani, both of them, are not going to be paid. They're doing this on a voluntary basis. And so therefore, there is no strings attached to them. Nobody can hang on to their words and bribe them or anything else. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can bring to the Congress $2 trillion to cut from the budget. And so that's going to be quite fascinating. Also this week, Netanyahu fired Yoav Gallant, who happened to have been his number two in the war cabinet. Now, it appears that there's something was going on that he did not like, and so he did fire him, and he replaced him with Israel Katz, which was another one of his friends. All three of them had been serving together for years, so it's not a new thing. President Trump, because he was elected, Iran's currency was devalued. The dinar is no longer a major currency. In fact, it is sliding each and every day. And probably by January 21st, it will be in very big trouble. Also, what will be in trouble will be the way they finance their government, because he's planning on doing all of the same things that he did before. And that will be basically to bankrupt the Ayatollah and the rest of them. Also going on, Iran is anticipating, Israel is also anticipating the fact that Iran is going to fire missiles at them again. Iran is also being warned about something else. You see, Netanyahu is not going to take it sitting down, and he's already destroyed a number of ways to get into the country without having to lose anybody, because he's destroyed their radar systems. And that is not something you can replace in 10 minutes, especially the ones that he brought from Russia, which were supposed to be the top of the line, which obviously weren't, because he was able to run 100 jets into Iran to destroy many different places across that country. Now, Hezbollah Well, let me give another one. How about Qatar? Qatar is a Middle Eastern country for the longest time has been on the side of Iran. This week, they announced that they wanted to have the Hamas to leave. They don't want them there any longer. Their reasoning says is because the fact that they're not trying to seek peace. So the Iranian or the Hamas leaders that have been living there for several years and have very nice, comfortable surroundings are now going to be forced to find someplace else, and most people assume they'll end up in Iran. Going on beyond that, Hezbollah created a new leader, Naam Qassam, who happens to be, well, he was voted in and he has threatened to destroy Israel, but he also wants to talk to him. So he wants to have a peace treaty signed between the two of them. Question is, which one will he do first? In Amsterdam, you know that they had the riots. It was interesting. The riot really began inside the stadium when the Netherlands team, the Dutch team, and the Israeli club team squared off. And it turned
I
out
thought it
that,
was when it came out. No?
well, when it came out, but while inside the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
scores 5-0.
Gosh.
After each goal, the fans waved Palestinian flags, not Dutch flags. So there was already contention inside. Then when they came out, you're right, there was a lot of things going on, including scooters that were filled with people that were basically causing trouble and disrupting the country.
Oh.
Besides that, if you remember last week, we talked about the 10,000 North Korean soldiers that have been taken or been sent to Russia and are becoming a part of their army.
Mm-hmm.
It's created two other problems. First off, the Russians or the Koreans themselves, many of them are defecting to Ukraine. Ukraine has promised them beds and warm food, which many of them have not ever had because the army is just fed enough to keep them going. At the same point in time, there's been a number of North Koreans who were able to get across and are now living in South Korea. They're organizing airplane loads to go back to Ukraine and fought with the Ukrainians against the Koreans and the Russians. On top of that, which is going to be even more problematic, is the South Korean government is talking about sending troops to support the Ukrainians. So we may have a special problem created, which some people are looking at as being the beginnings of a world war. Besides that, just today, or actually yesterday today, there's been the Russians have lost 1,200 men in a surprise attack by the Ukrainians, which brings their total death toll to over 600,000 in 4 years. 600,000. So you can imagine the Russian army is becoming depleted. They're also anything that's rolling off the assembly line is being thrown into the fight for the war. So it's become quite controversial that way. On top of that, Hamas, in order to, well, go back, for Korea, in order to send the 10,000, wanted in return nuclear technology. So right now, Korea has assumed 30 to 50 nuclear devices. Now, eventually, if Israel goes back and destroys the reactors in Iran, Korea, who also has a treaty with Iran, will probably be sending them some of their Ukrainian or some of their nuclear missiles. Something else is going on. Finally, I just find it fascinating how many events are lining up. Next week, I'm going to talk to you again about the red heifer. I've talked with Larry Borntrager, who's been for lack of a better term, the rancher in charge of the heifers in Shiloh. He's been a couple weeks away, but he's coming back up to again work with the cattle. They are now of age. They've also just been inspected, and I will show you a little clip from that of the actual inspection by the two rabbis as they go through searching for black hairs. There were 5 cows that were brought over. 2 of them have been declared not acceptable, but they're going to take those 2 cattle and they're going to artificially inseminate them now so that they will begin to breed an entire set of red heifers. So that's going to be happening. So let's get to the story. Tonight, I want to talk to you about something that was said in 1994. I think I've told you about it before, but it was Rabbi Levi Sadati, whose speech was 1 month, and he said, not Syria, not Persia, not Babylon, not Gaddafi. The rabbi said, Korea will be the biggest enemy of Israel. That was what I was talking about last week. And I shared with you several things about what's going on. I shared with you the fact that Korea was involved in the 67-day war, 6-day war. He was involved in the Yom Kippur War. They actually flew the jets out of Egypt that were involved in the war. So there's been lots of times when South Korea or North Korea has been involved, but we've never known about it. It's not been something that's highly published. There was a scripture that I read to you last week. It was from Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 21 and 22. The meaning may be even changing in my mind tonight. It began by saying, they have roused me to jealousy with no God. They have provoked me with their vanities, and I will rouse against them. Now he's talking about Israel, that they've roused him. So I'm going to rouse them to jealousy with a no people. If you ever have gone back and looked at the historical understanding of Palestine, you will know that there was never, ever, ever such a thing as Palestine. There are no Palestinian people. When the British were in charge of the country, the British had them giving birth certificates declared Palestinian Iraqi, Palestinian Egyptian, all of the countries where they originally came from. They never called them Palestinians. Even the Jews were given the name Palestinian Jew, so that they were always given that title. So the no people may be either Hamas, if you would like to say that, but for certain they were the Palestinians. I will provoke them with a vile nation, for a fire is kindled in my nostrils and burns unto the depths of the nether world. Now, by nether world, it's the word Sheol. Sheol. If you go back and you look across time and you look what's happening on the international date line, the letters that make up the word Sheol are found in the same letters that are used to the making of the word Seoul, as in Seoul, Korea. Now, they will devour the earth with her produce and set ablaze the foundations of the mountains. Now, there may be a war between South Korea and North Korea. It may not take place in South Korea or North Korea. It may take place in the Ukraine. Hard to tell what's going on, but there's something in the air that's changing. And again, Nachmani, Rabbi Nachmani, predicted this 27 years ago. Now, there's a book that I'm going to talk about now. It's a midrashic book, and I think for some of you, it's you already understand this, but for those who are listening and those who will watch the videos, I want to share with you the book called Yalkut Shimoni, which is really in English, it's called The Gathering of Simon. Simon being one of the 12 tribes, or Simeon, if you will. It's a midrash on the books of the Tanakh. In other words, all the books from Genesis all the way through Malachi, all the books themselves have what you would call companion stories, stories that are not found in the scriptures, stories that are used to help explain some of the concepts that are in the stories. And so as we go through this, the book was written in 11th, maybe up to the 14th century. But the stories go back to the 3rd and 4th century, at least. So some of the stories, as the story that we're going to talk about tonight, came in the 4th century before Islam was ever created. That's how far back we're going to go. Now, in this writing, if you want to, I always try to give you something that you might go look up. If you go to Chabad, there's a his name is Zvi, which be Sziv, Zvi Freeman. He along with another rabbi, wrote a book called Favorites, or sometimes it's called, it's called Favorites, Midrashic Writings. And it talks to you about all of the different understandings of the word Midrash, giving you all kinds of examples of it. Now, Midrash comes from the word drosh, which is to inquire. And so all these stories have been inquired and they've been added to our understanding of Scripture. Stories, especially. One of the leading sources for that is the Zohar. You see, the Zohar doesn't speak directly as to what the chapters are, although they are hinted in the chapters. And the stories are built upon events that may not really have occurred. It's a story that helps explain something that was written in a particular parsha. So it's one of those interesting things. For those who don't understand, there are 4 levels of understanding in the Hebrew Bible. Rabbi Rashi, his writings were based on what we would call Peshat, the simplest level. In other words, this word means this means that. Nothing too deep. But then after that, you begin to go into something that's a little deeper, a little more challenging. First, it's called remez, which means to hint at something. So the story is not directly spoken to, but it's hinted at. From there, you go to the level called drash, which is the midrashic writings. It's the stories that you're going to read. It's all of those kinds of things. And finally, the last one's called sod. Sod is those stories that are secret. They're hidden, like a basement. If it wasn't for the windows at the base of a house, and many of us don't have houses with basements in them anymore, but if you did, you would see windows so that the light would get in and you would know that there was a lower level to the building. Peshat, Remez, Drash, Sod is a acronym for the word Pardes. Pardes is paradise. So understanding all 4 levels of scripture leads one to paradise, leads one to true understandings, things that they would not normally go through. Now, the Midrash and the Talmud are not the same thing, although there's many stories in the Talmud that are actually Midrashic stories, but they're only there to, again, explain, help people to understand the laws that have been created, which is really what the Talmud is talking about. But understand it's not perfect. The Talmud takes sides. Everybody who comes on has their opinion, and their opinions are added to the story. Each one has a portion of their opinion which is absolutely correct, but it is not perfect. When we enter into the paradise, you and I will be studying the perfect word. It won't be a combination. It will be perfect. And you and I will be able to understand and learn all of those things. Now, the thing that of the Midrash that I want to talk to you about now comes from what I call the Yalkut Shimone 499. 499 tells us the chapter that they're in. 499 is a chapter dealing with the area of Isaiah beginning in chapter 52 and going to chapter 54. All of those stories are built into that. And this is one of the stories that's found there. It begins by saying that the year the Messiah will appear, when all the nations of the world will antagonize each other and threaten with war, the king of Persia, which is Iran, that king of Persia antagonizes the king of Arabia. Well, Arabia is Saudi Arabia today with war. So there's going to be a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, there already has been only a few years ago when Iran sent missiles to help to destroy the oil fields of Saudis. It was never really responded to except for what the president did when he blockaded everything off. But that was the first attack. What I'm going to try to tell you later is the fact that it's gotten worse. Iran has got to try to neutralize Saudi Arabia. He goes on to say, after this, the king of Arabia goes to Edom. Edom. The United States, according to the Jewish understanding, is Edom. We are part of that whole class or that whole group. And he goes there for advice. Then the king of Persia destroys the world conventionally or nuclear wise, I don't know which, and all the nations of the world begin to panic and are afraid. And Israel too is afraid as to how to defend from the God that sends them to the or sends this to them. Do not fear, for everything that I have done is for your benefit, to destroy the evil kingdom of Edom and to eradicate evil from this world so that the Messiah can come in your time. This is what's going to happen. So we have a war that begins in two places. Now, Ezekiel 38 and 39 specifically speak of Gog, and we understand Gog to be Russia. But if we look underneath Russia, you will find that the first country listed is Persia. So Persia is radically involved in all the wars that are going to be mentioned. They're only going to be a part, but they're going to be significant in their role. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, on September 25th, 2007, I don't remember if you were in school at that point in time. I had already graduated, but that's beside the point. The understanding is Ahmadinejad. I don't know if you remember him. He was the prime minister of Iran. He went to the United Nations Assembly to speak. His speech said, "Soon the regimes of the Western world will fall and be destroyed." Now, the threat was ideological, and it was actually aimed at Israel. Anybody who supported Israel would soon perish, according to his understanding. At the same time that he's speaking there, Iran is already developing their nuclear program. His focus of revenge was based upon the idea that Iran will nuke the world. This last month, when Israel retaliated for what had happened prior, one of the targets they picked, in fact, there were several of them, but one of them was Isfahan. I don't know if you even know who Isfahan is. It's in Iran. Isfahan used to be the largest Jewish city in Persia. It used to be the location where Mordecai lived after the fall of the empire. There's a lot of things that happened there. But Isfahan was also the city in which Sirach, I don't know if you remember Sirach. Sirach was the daughter of Asher. Now, according to stories, again, Midrashic stories, according to the stories, she did not die while she was in captivity. She did not die during the days of the judges. She did not die during the Babylonian captivity. She did not die during the Persian exile. In fact, it was not until after the Persian exile that she actually passed away, making her hundreds of years old. Her tomb is located in Isfahan. Well, it just so happens that the Iranians have built a military compound there, and they had 3 sites in which they were storing ballistic missiles that were to be loaded with nuclear warheads. That was one of the sites that was completely destroyed along with the camp itself. Like I say, it was only one of the sites. They destroyed 7 basic sites inside Iran, which is the reason why the Iranians are threatening to retaliate. So the war goes on. Now, remember, Israel is retaliating because of the Iranian threat, but it's also a way to get back at what happened a year earlier. Remember, a year earlier, Hamas left their compound and destroyed several different places. Well, there's an interesting story that goes along with that. And the story comes from, well, let me see if I can read it to you. It begins in the Midrash and it says, and it's in Yakut Shimoni, the second book, chapter 424, that according to that, the Ishmaelites, demons from an outhouse, that's how I put it, will have attacked from 3 ways: from the land, from the sea, and they will destroy a major city. If we look at the battles that happened after they broke out on October 6th, you will find that they broke through the wall into the area where the party was going on. Also, they came by boat around the wall and attacked the villages there and attacked a major city. And I cannot remember the name of the city, but they attacked the city, fulfilling the prophecy of 426 or 424. Now, it could be just a coincidence, or there may be something to the story. Because you see, sometimes we all understand that according to the Jewish understanding, prophecy ended with Malachi. He was the last of the great prophets. With his passing, prophecy was dead. But I don't think prophecy was ever really dead. But I think it was woven into the stories and passed along and continues to be passed along as they go through things. There was another story that came, again, it comes from 499. It says, "Let Mashiach come, but let me not see him." They would rather not be alive. I would rather not be alive to witness such things. And again, the Midrash says, according to this, they will be confounded at the end of days, that they will repeat over and over again, where did we go from here? Or where do we go from here? I believe that God will reveal himself soon and restore the primordial light of creation, that hidden light of Ha-Gamanuz. The mention at the start of this week's Parsha, well, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago, and we will bask in the light of its glow with it, illuminate the whole world, and finally enjoy the era of peace and prosperity that has been long sought. So there's going to be Iran a major player in the end of days, no doubt. There's going to be players that we haven't counted on. Among them will be Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a Sunni nation. Iran is a Shiite nation. You see, there's quite a difference. When Muhammad died, they could not decide on who would take his place. Some wanted his son, some wanted his general. And so the Islam, the Muslim group, split in 2. Now, the Shiites came with the general. They are more barbaric, more warlike. Islam is in Iran. But understand, Iran, back in the early days when these writings came about, Iran wasn't Muslim. Iran, for the longest time, was just simply a nation that would be based upon gods, but not Muhammad, not Allah. So the nation is quite different. The Sunni nation is actually the larger of the two groups, but it's the peaceful group. It's the ones that have depended upon others to fight their wars for them. Saudi Arabia, for the longest time, was not capable of having an event where they would have to go to war with anybody. In fact, the Houthis, which took over Yemen, actually had better weaponry than Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has not ever been able to remove them from Yemen. So the Saudis have had problems on their southern border ever since. In fact, the world's had problems because of what happened there ever since. Right now, we know that the shipping that's coming through that whole area has been cut down by 25%. It's going to change for the better, I think, because you see Russia, which is another one of these nations that's involved in this, has been exporting all of their natural gas to Europe. But the Europeans don't want their natural gas because they're on the side of the Ukrainians. But what do? Soon, the United States will be exporting natural gas to Europe, changing the dynamics of what's going on there, making Russia even poorer, also creating the problem of how do you maintain power when you have no money? That's what's problem going to be for Putin. Putin is running into trouble. Iran is going to be running into trouble because they've already spent all of their money on weapons for their neighbors. Soon the world is going to be dealing with the haves and the have-nots. And above the haves will be Saudi Arabia. And this is where Elon Musk comes in. You see, Elon Musk is obviously a businessman. But if you have ever paid any attention, you understand that he's a futurist. The world today will not be the same tomorrow. And the Saudis, under the new prince, have taken to the ideas of Elon Musk and have drawn upon from him ideas. One idea is called Vision 2030. In the northern part of Saudi Arabia, they're building a city, a modern city. It's going to be 150 miles long and 200 yards wide. Now imagine that, 150 miles long and 220 yards wide. Why? Because the city will be stacked. It will look like the Jetsons. It'll be all glass enclosed. There will be no automobiles there. Even Tesla won't sell any automobiles there. Everything will be done by rail transportation. They have rail cars now that will be able to go 150 miles in 20 minutes, taking you from one end of the country to the other end. They've also taken up with Elon Musk. They do have a Tesla plant there now. They're producing Teslas in Saudi Arabia. And Erdogan in Turkey has just bought the franchise, and he's going to be building Teslas in Turkey. The world is changing. On top of that, you and I both know about AI. AI is one of those competitive markets. Microsoft, for the longest time, was in charge of AI. But Musk has changed the dynamics, and he's developed XAI, which the Saudis have purchased the rights to. Musk is now helping to design this new city that's going to be called Neom. Neom means the line. So this city is going to be one long line, 150 miles long and only 220 yards wide. But it'll be multiple stories high. So instead of having cars, you have a train. But that's not the only way that they're going to get around. You see, they're already working, and Musk is working with them on developing a flying automobile. Imagine the world of Jetsons. Imagine what it will look like to be in a city that is made out of glass in the middle of a desert, because that northern section is all desert. They will be moving across that place in flying automobiles and trains. It will have gardens. It will have everything that is necessary, everything that you and I would think of. Because you remember, what's Musk's goal for the spaceships that he's creating? Living on Mars. How do you test for that? You build a city on Earth. Neom, the line. That's what's going on. Now, there's been lots of money that's been put into the project already. In fact, it's already underway. They've already begun to build across the desert already. They've spent hundreds of billions of dollars in this project. Because they've done that, something else is now happening. A lot of the Sunni nation is now looking to Saudi Arabia for understanding and for help. Saudi Arabia, because it's now becoming that way, is now looking for technology to defend itself. New technology, technology that's not even created. Who would you call on in order to give you ideas like that? The Leonardo da Vinci of our day, Elon Musk. Elon's first name means great oak or strong oak. Now, Elon, I don't think is a Jew. Don't think he has any Jewish blood. His mother was a fashion model in South Africa, and his father was originally a diplomat for the Shah of Iran. In fact, he went back to Iran, and nobody knows what's happened to him. I've dug as much as I can. I can't find him anywhere. But Elon Musk has redeveloped Saudi Arabia to the point that they will be a financial giant, just like the United States, based upon futuristic ideas. How can you keep the nation from becoming so powerful? Well, according to this, I think we can find in Yalkut Shimone 499, the only way to do that is to attack it. Sooner or later, Iran is going to have to deal with guess who? But they also have another problem. You see, back in October 6th, one of the things that happened was the fact that the the war started, according to the Hamas, in order to keep Israel from sacrificing a red heifer on the Mount of Olives, because they were sure that on Passover that would happen. Well, they were not ready yet. They were not 3 years of age, but they are now. They are now. Now what? They own the land that they were planning on using. They have an altar. They have everything they need, technically. The question is it the time? But not only that, there's another problem that's going on. Iran originally wanted to keep Israel and Saudi Arabia from making a treaty, the part of the Abraham Accord. That's another problem that Iran has. Iran is being put in a rock and a hard place. What happens when you get cornered? That's where the world is at. That's why the rabbis don't want to be alive when this time comes. I'm done for right now. Anybody want to think out loud?